Ask literally anyone what they would do should they become the President of the United States for a day. Go on, ask anyone. They would all say we would uncover all the aliens the American military Space Force is hiding from us. Obviously, that would be our answer. But what is this mysterious Space Force which we will infiltrate and uncover secrets of the aliens from? Find out in the latest episode of Big Facts, American Space Force Explained. Subscribe to our channel and hit the notifications button below for more videos like this. Truthfully, we rely on satellites even more than we rely on our smartphones. Air Force satellites perform a lot, and we mean a lot of civilian tasks like organizing GPS systems. Almost every single call made to 911 depends on satellites. Of course, all of these satellites are not created by the Space Force, so why do we give this organization credit at all? That's because we can't just put up satellites in space and expect them not to be in danger. It is like sending your kids to preschool on a bus alone, without any "don't take candy from a guy in a van" lecture. So yeah, we don't want our kids to be kidnapped, and so we have an organization that protects America's vulnerable orbital networks. This organization is the U.S. Space Command and Space Force. It has the same status as any other sector of the Army, like the Marines. But this organization is relatively new. Even before it was formed, the Pentagon was deploying satellites. Therefore, it has a huge task of trying to justify its existence. People always saying that intelligence, rather than muscle, is needed for space protection. The Pentagon had the intelligence. People thought wrongly. People are silenced because the Pentagon famously messed up during the Cold War and devastatingly understated just how much danger Russia and Chinese weapons presented. Truly, the creation of Space Force wouldn't have been easy anyway, even though its budget was barely existent in front of the Pentagon. $740 billion budget. The real problem was, as always, Donald Trump. Oh, he didn't oppose it. Quite the contrary, he accepted it too much. His campaign managers sold Space Force merch. Trump himself sealed off many of the deals and even told them how their uniform should look. It seems like that the only people taking Space Force seriously are its commanders. J. Raymond, the first commanding general, says that an entirely space-based organization is the proof of a modern society. But modern society operates on more than just missiles. There are more subtle space weapons, and the space race has a lot more players. And the old players are coming up with new strategies. Both China and Russia recognize the need for a highly sophisticated space force and reorganize their military for necessary accommodations. The U.S. responded with a lot of technology being invented, and of course creating the Space Force. Why aren't we mentioning what kinds of technology? We don't know, and neither does anyone outside of the government. If we became president one day, we will let you know. This brimming war is kind of sad when you think about it, because until recently, space was considered to be the one place that was peaceful. We used to think of that. Laugh out loud. Who is going to attack GPS satellites? It takes like $1 billion. And of course, we weren't wrong. Attacking a satellite was tricky and expensive, but not anymore. The extent of this danger has increased so much that the Navy has started to train its people in the classic sailor manner, navigation by the stars, because GPS systems left them quite vulnerable to attack. Another reason for the creation of Space Force is that satellites cannot be operated by one man who is great at keeping secrets. They are operated by multiple companies who need management. But turns out, leaking of secrets wasn't the concern here. It was the lack of sharing information. Every organization kept pieces of information to themselves, which left the central government scratching their heads as to what was going on. So, we have established the Space Force. What now? We have to figure out what to call its members. After all, we call soldiers of different sectors, sailors and Marines. Should Space Force members be called Airman, Spaceman, Superman? But despite all these pressing questions, the making of Space Force was assisted by none other than Donald Trump, a famous businessman who made it clear that he wanted to be involved in every single part of the Space Force, from the uniforms to the building designs. And despite we are sure everyone not being very fond of him, the commander of the Space Force could not exactly refuse Donald Trump when he requested a huge meeting in the Oval Office. So the commanders went ahead and presented the long list of frontline questions, the first of which was the deciding of the official seal. There were 4 options, narrowed down by a huge and lengthy meeting with advertisement agencies and Air Force members. They were all printed and presented to the president. Trump took his time studying them, but in the end, he was able to make his decision. A silver delta symbol circled by a white and orbiting spacecraft surmounting a blue globe. Of course, pointing it out was not enough, so Trump took out his pen, circled the logo, and gave his autograph. What happened next? Served the creators of SpaceForce a satirical Netflix series? Quite well. Trump insisted that Melania, the First Lady, should help design the uniforms, not because she is a Giovanni-level designer, but because she apparently has impeccable fashion sense. It was quite comedic. And what happened after that served Twitter with a full day of memes and entertainment. Donald Trump, without informing the Pentagon, posted the seal, which he called a logo. The people went crazy over this, particularly after someone pointed out that the seal looked a bit like Star Trek's emblem from the fictional space organization. And that is just not being petty. Paramount Pictures had to request a conference call with the Pentagon to ensure that their trademarks were not infringed upon. The U.S. military was quite embarrassed with the whole affair and fired off a pre-written statement that said the main elements of the seal were very old, dated back to the 1940s, and that the seal represented the Air Force and its proud history. This actually elevated what was challenged before as well. SpaceForce was seen as an elaborate prank on the American population. Commanders insisted that any news of any publicity is good publicity, and that even mockery would benefit them in high levels. He said that the government needs to drive profits from the pop culture bandwagon that everyone seems to be on. He might actually make an appearance on SpaceForce, the Netflix show. This way, they would be able to get in on the joke. However, this humor hides the fact that space war is a very concerning matter. A mix of unprotected satellites, Russian tech developing at astonishing rates, and Chinese competition is quite deadly in its potential. The Trump administration and the majority of the House Democrats are in favor of this Space Force because of this very potential. It is something that actually a lot of politicians agree upon, despite Donald Trump being on the front line. The entire operation was not well received in other countries. Both Russia and China said that this means the U.S. is making weapons out of space. They also said that the creation of Space Force violates the international consensus that outer space will only be used peacefully and never for war. This can, of course, destroy global strategic balance and stability. The head of Russia's space program addressed many countries, including Brazil, India, China, and South Africa via video conference. In the address, he said that he called for space free of weapons of any type to keep it fit for long-term and sustainable use as it is today. And this point of view is not just coming from the so-called enemies of the United States. Some U.S. critics and arms control analysts have also said that this creation of Space Force makes conflict a lot more likely than if Pentagon simply protected satellites. This weird new race for space can turn the universe into a war-fighting domain, sort of how countries lay claim to the air. A completely different branch of the armed forces for space can risk the militarizing of U.S. space policy and might promote insane weapons to be used in space. On the 17th of June, the Pentagon revealed its defense space strategy that said very clear that it was going to create weapons, coordinate with allies, and prepare for war in space. What has become apparent after the creation of the Space Force is that there are no comprehensive international laws about military action in space. Of course, there is the 1967 Outer Space Treaty that forbids countries from deploying nuclear weapons or any other kind of weapons of mass destruction in outer space. But that is so generic, and it only mentions nuclear weapons and could not acknowledge the plethora of new weapons that have been created. So what happens when there are no strict rules in space about this sort of thing? Of course, there is no protection of satellites unless space is militarized, and the whole ordeal led to many countries developing weapons that can be used to destroy satellites. And what happens if that organization, like SpaceForce, is created? This has generated constant debate between the U.S. military and activists. The Army wants to bring in more allies. Right now, the White House is not interested in making new treaties based on space technology. But experts state that the situation will get harder probably. Right now, the UN officially recognizes about 90 countries who have space dominion. In March 2019, India tested a satellite destroyer, but it blew up its own satellite. Soon enough, it declared that it was in the elite space dominion club. Yeah, this whole thing, including the Space Force, is taken as a joke for a reason. Countries are being nearly petty over this, and this 90s nation club is expanding as well. Soon enough, it will be joined with other countries like North Korea, Iran, and Pakistan, as they all have the technology and desire to go universal. Do you take Space Force to be a joke, or is it truly important? Comment down below and we'll pin the best one. Like this video and share it with everyone you know. Subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. This was Big Facts, bringing you the best content on YouTube. Tune in next time for more videos like this.